of stuff is going on the college campus,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir. Everything's cool. Everything's cool.
Absolutely. And of course, we're here with our engineer, producer, helps us to pull together the live streaming of the program, Willie H, and that's ATCH. No, ATCYH. No, AYTCH. I told you I could spell. Just give me a little bit of time. I've been a little bit crazy. I've been sick this week, right? But Willie H, welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. Make sure you guys call in. I will be looking for your comments because sometimes we have comments I don't see till after the show. But call in, though. That's what makes the difference, which is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. You see it on the screen, so call in. And don't be afraid. We want to hear what you got to say.
Absolutely. And so I started talking, Norm, on Monday about the situation with the Speaker of the House and the idea of minority rule.
Yes, sir.
That what has emerged in this country is a science that has been learned by conservative Republican forces in this country. They've learned how to win elections in this country with a minority vote rather than a majority vote. Just follow what I'm saying. You know, this is supposed to be democracy, right?
A little off.
So it's supposed to be half of the country plus one. That vote is what determines the decision. Mm-hmm. But that's not what's going on right now.
Right.
Now you can have 60% of the vote, come from one set of people, and 40% come from another set of the people, and the 40%, their vote winds up being the vote that determines the policy.
Yeah.
You say, well, how can that possibly occur? It's because you can manipulate the system. If a decision has to be made at a state level, then you have to get a majority of the people who vote, the state assembly and the state senate, you have to get a majority of them to go along with whatever you're talking about to turn that into policy or law. We all understand that, right?
Right.
But if it turns out that when you look at the total body of state elected people, and you look at them in terms of what percentage of them are liberals, what percentage are independents, what percentage are Republicans, what percentage are conservatives, independents, etc., what you find is that the party that seems to be successful in getting their votes driven in the way that they want them to vote, they only represent about 25, 30, sometimes 35% of the voting public. Well, if they only represent 35% of the voting public, why is it that their wishes are the ones that are being honored in the legislature? Well, it's because your state legislators are picked from election districts. So you have, right? You have election districts. Let's say in New York State, you have, I'm going to make it up, you're going to have 200, election districts for a state Senate. And let's say in Erie County, you had, let's say 8, election districts in Erie County.
Yeah.
So if you had 8 election districts in Erie County and 13% of the people in Erie County are African people, you would think maybe one of those election districts would be represented by an African person. If 15% of the people in that district are people of Hispanic origin, you would expect another one of those 8 to be a Hispanic person, or at least a person that the Hispanic community, whatever is the dominant part of that community, that they supported that dominant, faction. Mm-hmm. So let's suppose that the Republicans and the conservatives, between them, they have about 35% of the vote. But what they do is they spread, if they control the boundaries of the districts, they can take their 35% and match it together with other people who are closer to them than they are to the people that they really don't like. So I'm just going to put this ugly, right? If they really don't like Hispanic people and really, really, really don't like African people, and well, let's say those two populations particularly, what they do is they spread that population out in a way that they're broken up into the 8 election districts in a way that their vote only represents about 8 or 9 or 10% in any one of those districts, and they can therefore ignore, their vote because they don't have close enough majority to be able to affect the vote.
Right.
So it's this kind of situation that we have going on. You have a number of people. I gave you the example of Alabama, that had 7 congressional districts, and historically has had 2 congressional representatives that reflected the 27% of the population of Alabama that are African people. But a couple of years ago, the Republicans said we've made our moves now, and now we're gonna put them in force. So we're gonna change the election district lines, and we're gonna break up these African people and spread them out into majority, conservative white dominant districts. Mm-hmm. That way, even though you may have 27% of the population being African American, you have virtually zero of the population that is represented at the congressional level. Excuse me, still sick. But representative at the congressional level, and so you still wind up with people who represent a significant portion of the population having no representation in Congress. That happens in Buffalo. We talked about this on Monday.
Yeah.
You have statewide offices to be or to create the district lines so that different districts, I'm taking the state assembly as one, you need to have something like 135,000 people to make up a assembly district. You got people in Sloan and Silver Creek and I'm just making up cities, Albion, or whatever, but they're very small communities. They're 8,000, 10,000, 15,000 people in their communities. How do they get represented to be in a pool of 135,000 people? Well, the people that create the lines, they carve up the geography, and they say, boy, we need 60,000 votes. More thousand votes in order to have 135,000 in our district. I know we'll take them from Buffalo. So Buffalo has a portion of its population go to a district in which now their 60,000 votes are a part of 135,000 votes, but the people that make up the 75,000 votes on top of the Buffalo 60, they vote the same way all the time. They vote, against unemployment, enhanced unemployment. They vote, against lowering or raising taxes to support, public services. They vote against, all the things that the liberal population, tends to vote for. They vote against those things. They're voting for their pocket interests. If that's done all over Buffalo, what you find is that Buffalo has the highest concentration of people, but has the lowest representation in the state assembly and the state senate. In addition to that, you do it with Democrat versus Republicans. You do the same thing. You gerrymander the districts. That's what they call it, gerrymandering. You gerrymander the districts so that as many of the Democrats as you can, you put into the fewest number of districts so that I think one of the examples, I forgot which state this was, they had just take 100% of the state. They took for the Democrats, they put them into 30% of the geography of that state. They just carved the district lines up because the Democrats live mostly in urban centers, in cities. So they designed the district lines so that all of those Democrats were, bunched into 2 or 3 districts. So they won those districts, but there were like 17 other districts in the state that the Democrats had no sway on at all. So you end up in a situation where the Democrats had roughly 50% or 54% of the vote in that state, but they had only 15 or 20% of the statewide representatives or the federal representatives. That's what happens when you're able to manipulate your control over election laws so that you get to be the ones to design the election districts. In addition to that, you get to also design the election laws in that state so that you can make it easier for people that vote like you to register, to get recruited, to get into the system, and get marketed to. Mm-hmm. And you make it harder for the people that are not like you. You make it harder for them to know about voting, when the vote's taking place, who's the candidates, connecting to people. They literally turn election. And I learned this from, I went to a training by AFSCME, the American Federation of State and County Municipal Employees. This is back in 1976. And they taught me, it took them 2 weeks to teach me because I'm a little slow, but they taught me that you can turn elections off in districts where you would actually find people 2 or 3 days after an election has already occurred, and you told them, well, how'd you vote for so-and-so? Who? Didn't you vote? There was what vote? Was there an election? Because you go around that district and you find no signs, you find nothing on TV, nothing on radio, or as little as they can possibly do. They try to manage the participation of populations of people that they don't want to be represented. They try to manage how those people even learn about the election, let alone what party they get to register for, and so on. Go ahead.
Mr. Hare, there are so many people that are uninformed politically anyway. And if you do not, you don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They won't vote. But here's my question: is there a probability of this becoming policy? In our elections nationwide, them changing and gerrymandering the districts and kind of switching things to where they get things done and the let's just say the Democratic vote isn't represented.
Well, that's what's happening right now.
I'm saying throughout. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I'm saying throughout the country. Yeah. That is what's going on right now.
Is it becoming policy?
Whether it's policy or not, it's the practice. It's what's actually getting done. Mm-hmm. And so the Republicans figured this out, 20, 25 years ago. So while everybody was, arguing about civil rights and, property rights and corporate taxes and all the things that they should have been arguing about, right. But while everybody was focusing on those issues that are very hard to get changed at a national level because so much money and power is involved, you end up spending a lot of energy accomplishing very small changes in those issues. But below those issues, at the state and county level, these people are running for school boards. These people are running for town supervisor. These people are running for council persons or whatever these, city or village legislatures are, and so on. They've been working at that level. Mm-hmm. And what they've done is they've taken over that apparatus so that they were able to, first, to affect how election law is applied.
Okay.
Right? So whatever the election laws already were, they would do things to sort of reduce the part of the election laws that provided for inclusion, mm-hmm. like the Voter Rights Act of 1965. And so what they did is they would just ignore, that stuff. And you wouldn't know about it until 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road.
Right. Because
you can't see it. It's not that sensitive.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Hare. I'm seeing that this is a very, if you look at it, an offensive strategy for the GOP.
Right.
Is there any type of a defensive move that can be made to reverse this?
So I get you. And so the Democrats could do the same thing.
Okay.
However, as with any large, sort of a class-wide, initiative, it's not going to happen quickly. So if you've got a presidential election coming up in November of 2024, and you just started working on ways to reverse what the conservatives and Republicans have been doing at the state level, at the ability to control electoral practices and processes, if you just started working on that now, the likelihood is you're not going to have any effect on the November 2024 election, because the processes you have to go through take so long and require so much. Just to say what I said to you, how many people are actually listening long enough to hear and internalize and then act on what I'm saying to you right now?
Yeah.
So that's the problem. So what other countries have do, I know that we think of the United States as a representative democracy. That's what we try to say that we are. But the reality is that the representation part of it has been manipulated so that the people who are actually being represented today are the people that are the least of the population, and the people that are being underrepresented are the most of the population. And to give you an example of that, in Biden's year in 2022, we're trying to recover from the pandemic, and a lot of structural things were done to try to prop up the economy and make it possible for people to continue to make money. Obviously, half of the population in the country are women, right? And everybody who actually births a child is a woman, right? Not every man births a child, but every child in this country is birthed by a woman, right? And so you would think that their interest would have to be high on the list of priorities of whatever priorities exist in the United States. You wouldn't blow off, those interests because they represent such a high percentage of the interest groups in this country. Well, during the Biden administration, they said that women were knocked out of the labor force because they weren't able to work. Their companies were closing, that they didn't have access to child care. People were getting sick from this coronavirus and so on. And it created this massive exodus of women from the workforce. Now, there was obviously a large exodus of men from the workforce as well, but it much more seriously affected women than it affected men. So the Biden administration said, well, let's do something about that. Let's put money together to expand child care. Because if you have child care, but the child care is in North Dakota and you live in Buffalo, the child care is not helping you, right? If you live in Buffalo and child care workers get $7.20 an hour, but people in Philadelphia are getting $15, $16 an hour, most of the people that want to go into child care are going to travel to Philadelphia and go work there rather than work in Buffalo for half the money.
Right.
So Biden said, let's put money up to even out the money that child care agencies have to pay their workers so that they're getting closer to a living wage, and everybody is getting it who works in that industry would be getting closer to a minimum a living wage. And let's put money up to help people finance opening up more child care facilities in more spaces, so that if you lived in the Perry Projects, there'd be 6 or 7 child care facilities on South Park and Louisiana and Hamburg, and so on. There'd be a lot. Right now, there's none. If you go into Perry Projects right now, you go down Hamburg Street, you go down South Park, you go down Louisiana, you won't find a single child care facility. Yet you got a population of 8,000 or 9,000 people, at least half of them women, and I'm pretty sure half of the women are childbearing age. So you know that there's going to be a demand and a need for child care in that community, but the cost of actually constructing a place that meets all of the health code, fire code, space requirements, and et cetera, providing for food, for educational support for the kids in those child care programs, that costs a lot of money. So the Biden administration created a child care act that would actually do that, right? And would help to prop up the child care industry to expand it. And what happened was women went back to the workforce, very quickly. And so instead of having 20 or 30% of women leaving the workforce, you had most of them returning to the workforce, and women who had never worked before, joined the workforce. Mm-hmm. And it helped to really gin up the economy of this country. Yeah. So we ended up with 2022 with a GDP expansion of almost 3%, over that year, in a time period where people were thinking that we're going to have a 1 or 2% reduction in GDP.
Right.
And that meant that you had more money on Wall Street, you had more money in people's pockets. Now, granted, inflation went up because the more money that's available, the more people are going to charge for their products and their services. And of course, the Republicans will blame the Democrats and say it's your fault. It's not the people that are increasing the prices. It's not their fault. It's your fault, right?
But Mr. Hare, if you're making more money, everybody's making more money. In most cases, inflation or anything inflationary isn't even a problem. Well, I think
it's a problem if your media focuses on it. So if all you hear on the 6 o'clock news and the 11 o'clock news and the 5 o'clock news and the 10 o'clock news is inflation, inflation, you think it's a terrible problem.
The media always is focused on inflation.
Right. But that's because we're not doing a good enough job of educating people that, it's true, costs have gone up, and here are the reasons why costs have gone up, but wages have gone up, and here's the reason why wages have gone up. And wages are not going up just because people are getting higher wage rates, but you're getting much higher percentages of people working. And if you have more people working, they're making more demand for consumer goods. If they're making more demand for consumer goods, employers will produce more of those goods to sell to people, and therefore the employers will have to hire more people, which creates more money in the pockets of those people, and that system or that cycle gins up everything for everybody.
Yeah.
So instead of just whining all the time about the fact that bananas cost, I don't know what bananas cost. I just made that up. Instead of costing $1 a pound, now they cost $1.15 a pound. We'll buy one less banana. If that's how you feel about it, buy one less banana. But don't attack the system that has been put in place that has reinvigorated the economy and made a bigger pie for everybody to eat from. Don't kill that. Because some whiner over here is saying, "Oh, look over there. Those people are eating a lot of pie." Well, they're eating a lot of pie because there's a lot more pie to eat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you all were in charge, there was a lot less pie, to eat. Right.
Real quick, Mr. Hare, what is our unemployment rate now? Is it still around?
Still 3.8%.
3.8, which is really great.
Historically low.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So this idea that I'm trying to get people to understand is minority rule has become policy in the United States. Not formal, but in practice, minority rule has become the policy. You've got something like 89% of the people in this country live in 11% of the states. Just think about that for a second. 11% of the states have 89% of the population in this country.
It's a lot of land out there that's open.
Right. There's a lot of land that doesn't have a lot of people in it.
And it's unutilized.
Right?
Yeah.
But they have the same number of senators, right? You live in a state that has like 4 people in the state, and you get 2 senators, right? In Alaska has fewer people than in Erie County. There's 920,000 people live in Erie County. There's fewer than 800,000 people that live in Alaska. You got Rhode Island, a very similar kind of situation. You have Wyoming, similar situation. These people all get the same representation at the Senate level as you get in California with almost 1 million people, in New York State with over 20 million people. You get the same representation as states that only have 6 people, right, at the senatorial level. So those states actually drive majority politics, right? Because they don't have to do anything to increase, their representation in the federal legislature. They're statutorily given the same representation as every other state. You end up in situations where in Congress you have people that represent fewer than 30% of the population, yet they have 46, 47% of the congressional representatives because of this gerrymandering, because of this tricky stuff that they learn how to do. And so we have to think about that. I'm going to give you this quickly before we get to the break. I think this is on page 7. There's an overwhelming majority of the world's democratic countries use something called proportional representation for their elections. I know we got the music coming up, but just follow me for just this 1 second. Where districts elect multiple representatives to Congress in proportion to their party's share of the vote. So what that means is if there are 10 offices at the congressional level that are open to be voted on, and you have say 30% of the people vote for your party, you would get 3 out of those 10 congressional representatives would be from your party. Your party, as a party, would vote on who would represent them, but the public would vote for your party, not for you as an individual, but for your party. And therefore, you'd be able to allocate the representation across those different interest groups based on their proportion of the electorate. If you did it that way, then everybody would be represented. So in Buffalo, it wouldn't matter that you tried to carve out, slices of Buffalo, and Buffalo ends up with no representation. If 12% of the people that live in New York State live in Buffalo, then you would wind up, or not Buffalo, in Erie County, then you would wind up with 12% of your state legislature would be from Erie County.
Just real quick, if we went that way, that's kind of similar to the defensive strategy that I was talking about. Mm-hmm. Due to the gerrymandering and the effect that has, this right here kind of evens things out.
So that's what this proposal talks about. It would allow more voters to have a say in who represents them. If a party wins 40% of the vote, it would get 40% of the seats.
Yeah.
If Oklahoma liberals and Massachusetts conservatives were a minority in those states, they'd have a minority vote. If liberals, independent, and progressives represented 70% of the people in that state, and they voted that way, then they would have 70% of the representatives representing them in those states. If you did that, it would be a much more accurate representation
yes,
at the state and federal level. But right now, it's very inaccurate. It's very off. And the incentive to change the structure doesn't exist. The Republicans have built an incentive to continue to do what they've been doing, and as a consequence, we end up in what we have right now. You've got 4 people in Congress who are able to stop the election of the Speaker of the House. They've now they went through 15 rounds with Kevin McCarthy, threw him out. Now they've had 4 speakers of the House they've elected from their majority, but when they had to go get the majority of the Congress as a whole, they failed because you didn't get all of the Republicans to vote for their own party's candidate.
Is there still a looming presence of Trump maybe becoming Speaker?
Well, they're not talking about Trump becoming Speaker anymore. That people spit on that idea.
Okay.
Accurately, they spit on that idea. But Trump's people and Trump himself have been saying, if you're a person who voted to certify the November 3rd, 2020 election, you can't be the Speaker of the House because you're offending me as Donald Trump, because I say that the November election was invalid. And based on that, you've had at least 3 of the 4 people that have been propped up so far because they had voted for certifying the election. They've not been able to get the support of their own party.
Wow.
And they're already elected people in their party, but couldn't get the support of their own party. So we'll get into a little bit more of this as we go along. I didn't mean to go so far. I just want you to understand there are other ways that these things can be done. They don't have to be done the way that they. And every model has a body of good points and has a body of bad points. But what's going on right now shouldn't continue because it's clearly bad for the country.
Yeah.
So listen, we're going to take a quick break. Hopefully the sponsors won't go away mad because you were taking up so much time. We will see you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. That was me, by the way.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM WBNY Buffalo. Ready for radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging? Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan Hare. Join me right here, 91.3 FM WBNY. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY. All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan Harry, your host. We're here with Norm McCarter, who is the in-studio audience of one. Welcome back, Norm.
Thank you, Mr. Hare.
And, of course, we're here with Willie H., who does the live streaming of the program. Welcome back, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan Hare.
Call us again at 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. I know that some of these things are challenging that we're talking about, but we're in challenging times.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a situation where you can't even here's something that the media does that I find representative of my attitude towards the mass media in this country. They're saying that Democrats joined, this is the way they frame it, Democrats joined 8 Republicans to kick Kevin McCarthy out of the speakership of the House of Representatives. That sounds like Kevin McCarthy was ousted by the Democrats. It was the Democrats' fault, and the Democrats initiated it. Now, I need for you to understand that the Speaker of the House in this country for more than 100 years has been elected by whatever the majority party is in the House of Representatives. So if there are 435 representatives in the House, you would need 218 of, I think it's roughly what it is, of those representatives would have to vote for a particular person. So whoever has the majority of votes in the House, they're the ones who make that decision, right? You wouldn't have, if the majority of the people in the House are Republicans, the Democrats wouldn't elect their own because they would elect a Democrat. And the Republicans would vote against that Democrat. They wouldn't vote for anybody who's not a member of their party. That's the way it's been for well over 150 years. So for the media to assert that because the Democrats voted against the Republican candidate, because that Republican candidate was a Republican candidate. The Democrats would be voting for a candidate from their own party rather than voting for a candidate from somebody else's party. In addition to that, every single person that's been propped up as a potential Speaker of the House has been somebody who voted against the acceptance of the November 3rd, 2020 election. 147 members, just to be clear about this, 147 members of, I think it was 147 members of Congress voted against certifying the November 3rd, 2020 election. So why would the Democrats vote for you? Why do the Democrats vote for people that actually are trying to destroy the election process,
right, and
elect some authoritarian dictator like Donald Trump, to rule this country? Why would they do that? That's insane. So this is not a question of the Democrats kicked out McCarthy. They didn't ask for McCarthy to be kicked out. The Republicans are the ones who changed their own rules in the House and said that only one person had to submit a motion to a vote of no confidence against the Speaker of the House, and that vote had to be taken up, and the whole House had to vote on it. And that's how this thing happened with Kevin McCarthy in the first place. That's not the Democrats' fault. Right. Democrats had nothing to do with that. That's entirely the Republicans. Now, when it came down to the vote, of course the Democrats voted against the Republican candidate. Why would they vote for the Republican candidate, right? I mean, the Republican candidate, they're not offering anything, right? What the Republicans were offering was 30% cuts or 30% cuts in virtually every aspect of discretionary spending in the federal level of this country, and except for defense spending and lowering taxes. So they still wanted to lower taxes more, increase defense spending higher, and cut everything else, that is paid for by discretionary spending in the federal budget. Why would the Democrats vote for anybody who has that agenda, right, at all? But that's what's going on right now. I just want you to understand that the media is giving you the impression that the Democrats knocked Kevin McCarthy out of his office. Structurally, it's true. Only 8 Republicans voted against Kevin McCarthy, and the rest of the Republicans voted for McCarthy.
But
it was the 100% of the Democrats joined the 8 Republicans.
Right.
So I think it was 212 Democrats joined 8 Republicans, and that knocked Kevin McCarthy out.
The Democrats did their job, what they're supposed to do.
That's what they're supposed to do, right? If the Republicans lost favor with their own candidates, then they should have gotten out of the way and let the Democrats nominate somebody, for that office, and they should have joined the Democrats. I'm sure they could have found some conservative Democrat, representing some, conservative district that would have, somebody like, what's his name in West Virginia? The names start to get away from me and whatnot. But whatever the case, the congressman or the senator from West Virginia, very conservative district, they could have joined with somebody like him, and gotten a more conservative Democrat if they couldn't find somebody in the Republican Party that they could take. But what are the Republicans putting on the table? They're not going to vote for the funding of the government. It has to be done on November 17th, or you're going to have the same shutdown crisis of the government that you had a few weeks ago. You're going to have that again on November 17th. They're not going to support additional funds for Ukraine, even though it's U.S. policy to support the fight against authoritarian governments like Russia actually invading a democratic country and trying to conquer that country and take it and put it into the pocket of Russia. The Republicans aren't willing to do that because, Donald Trump doesn't want them to do it. I don't know what the Russians have done with Donald Trump, but they actually want to stand with Russia, against the Ukraine. That doesn't make any sense, but that's what's going on right now. And so many other issues, that we have in front of us. And so I just want us, the public, to understand this is not the Democrats knocking out a Republican Speaker of the House. The Republicans knocked out the Speaker of the House. Democrats voted against the Republican nominee because Democrats wanted a Democrat, in that space, who would support the things that Democrats are supporting. Why would they vote for somebody who's going to do everything in their power to destroy everything the Democrats have been trying to get done? And more importantly, when you support someone, you need to be able to trust that what that person says, that person will do. Kevin McCarthy negotiated with President Biden back in was it May to July of this year, negotiated a deal to end the debt ceiling crisis. That deal involved a ceiling on how much money could be spent in all of the departments of the federal government. That was supposed to be an effort to frame how we get the government funded in September of this year so that we wouldn't have the government shutdown that we had going on right now. So McCarthy went along with the deal. They increased the debt ceiling. Well, they didn't actually increase the debt ceiling. They just took away what the debt ceiling was. There was no cap
Right.
on how much money could be spent. But that's the same thing as increasing the debt ceiling. So McCarthy went along with that. Once that was done, then we had the issue of funding the government as the next thing coming up. It had to be done by September 30th of this year. It didn't get done because Kevin McCarthy did not honor the deal that he himself negotiated with Joe Biden. So why would the Democrats vote to continue to appoint a person in the Speaker's office who you can't trust? Who says one thing, does a deal with you, and then when it's time to cash in the deal, he says, "Nope, I was lying. I didn't mean for you I didn't mean to give you that. I'm taking it back." And so and the other Republicans, to a person, are doing the same thing. So this is the reality that we find ourselves in. So I think it's important that people understand the context of what's going on here. But I wanted to visit with a second on this sound that you may have heard. You probably were sleeping and didn't hear the sound, but it's the sound of a shoe dropping. And in fact, 2 shoes have dropped. Remember the last time we talked, 1 shoe had dropped, right? That was the Sidney Powell. That she said, okay, yes, I stole, yes, I lied, yes, I cheated, yes, I'm slovenly, and all of that. And so, just don't take my law license away and don't put me in jail, okay? And I'll tell you everything. So she put her stuff on the table. And then we had Cheeseborough, another Trump lawyer who was even closer to Trump. And he said, okay, you caught me. That was my hand in the cookie jar. I should have wore gloves, but I didn't. My bad. I'll tell you everything. Just don't take my law license away and don't put me in jail. And so Cheeseborough has done his thing. I don't know if you all remember this lady. Her name is Alice. Oh, goodness, I thought I had written her name down. That was Sidney Powell, Cheeseborough. Oh, goodness. Her last name is Alice. And she was one of the ones that was running around. Yeah, there she is. She was one of the ones that was running around. Her name is Jenna. That's her name. Jenna Ellis. She was the one that was running around with Donald Trump and fronting that the election was stolen, machines were invented in like Sidney Powell. They were manufactured in Venezuela. Why would you be buying voting machines manufactured in Venezuela and bringing them to the United States, and that everybody across the United States is voting on those machines? That's not even a lie. That's a fairy tale. That's just silly nonsense. but she was promoting all of that stuff. Well, this Jenna Ellis was promoting that kind of stuff as well in terms of what this misconduct that they claim was going on in the election. So the first shoe to drop, this is an article written by John Rosamondo, where it talks about Kenneth Cheeseborough pleading guilty to charges in connection with a legal memo that he wrote for former President Donald Trump, suggesting that he could send an alternate state of electors to the Congress. Now, I just want you to feel this for a second. Initially, Kenneth Cheeseborough was charged with something like 4 or 5 felonies. If you had been charged with 4 or 5 felonies and you negotiated a plea deal, the likelihood is you're going to end up having to plead to at least one of those felony charges, and you're going to be facing some jail time. But if you're part of the American elite, the elite rulers of this country, the ruling class of this country, you can commit these kinds of crimes and then plea deal a plea, to a negotiated settlement on the instead of having a court trial, you plead to a certain smaller set of charges, and you can walk away with no time and keep your law license. Well, that's what happens with this guy. He was one of 18 defendants, included Donald Trump, that were indicted in August of this year by DA Fannie Willis in Georgia. Cheeseborough helped create slates of alternate electors in Georgia and in other states that were won by Joe Biden. He pleaded guilty to a single felony charge of conspiracy, and he got a sentence of 5 years probation. This is somebody who actually was participating in a coup to overthrow the government of the United States and replace it with a government of a smaller set of people that just essentially conquered the United States.
So how could somebody involved in treason just walk away like that? Did he give up anything, or I mean, is there any reason that he is
he's
not
part
convicted?
he's part of the American elite, the ruling class of this country. If you went and stole an automobile, right, they wouldn't come back and say, well, he just stole an automobile, and nobody died, even though somebody may have died. Nobody died. He's a good guy, and he's got a law license, so we know he can be a productive employee for somebody. Let's not take everything away. We'll just hit him with, a minor conviction and probation. And that's what they're doing for this guy. In return, you don't even know what he said or is promising to testify to.
That's what I'm kind of wondering.
Right.
Is there something big that?
So the only thing that I can say in response to that, Norm, is that for him and this other lady, Sidney Powell,
Yeah, both of them.
both of them had to testify on the record. In other words, the Justice Department attorneys, Jack Smith and Fannie Willis, they were able to sit in front of these people and have their lawyers ask these people questions, make them respond to the questions, and for that to be recorded. So that if they say, yes, I stole that money, that was my $100,000 that you saw in my blouse, but I didn't mean to steal it. If I thought you were going to ask for it back, I would have given it to you myself. I mean, that's the kind of craziness that's being talked about right now. But when they testify on the record, you're going to ask them, did you steal that money? And they're going to say, yes, I stole that money, because no other answer is going to be accepted, there. Once they had that on the record, then they went along with the plea deal, because if they bring these people back to testify later this year or next year, they have the recorded testimony of these people to back up what it is that they say these people know,
Right.
and what these people did. So that's the best that I can say, that they have a concrete body of evidence to prove the things that they're going to have these people testify to in these trials that are still coming up.
I know they're going to utilize some of the stuff that was said or that they testified to, which is in, all together. it'll help them against Trump.
Higher ups, right?
Yeah, Trump
right.
or higher ups.
Right.
But at the same time, you already got them for the crimes that they committed. I mean, why not prosecute?
You would
those
think
levels?
you would think that they would hold these people to a higher standard of accountability. I'm pretty sure if that were you or I, and we had done, if I'm not mistaken, DA Fannie Willis charged these people with something like 19 different felonies. If you were a part of the commission of 19 different felonies, I'm pretty sure that you would wind up with a sentence that involved more than you writing on the board, 1,000 times. I'm a nitwit,
Slap on the wrist.
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. But that's how this thing is done. I guess they feel like they're saving money and they're getting what they want, which is enough evidence to be able to convict people like Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump.
But when you're charged with treason, though, Mr. Hare, come on now. It's something. Something's got to happen more than a slap on the wrist.
And even the treason, they didn't call it treason. They call it, tampering with, an election, tampering with people's right to vote, tampering with the results of a vote.
Regardless of the wording, we know what it is.
Right, but I'm just saying, the words are what ends up surviving. If you refer to this 30 years from now, it's going to be the words that are on paper, not the words that were said in the newspaper.
I got you,
right?
sir. Yeah.
So the second plea deal is the one that involved Sidney Powell, and she reported, emails obtained by the New York Times show that Cheeseborough was considering not only the legality of various maneuvers related to the people certified to represent the Electoral College votes. He put the testimony of Cheeseborough actually undercuts the arguments that he had been making only legal advice to Donald Trump. He was asserting that when he was giving Donald Trump, these proposals on how to manipulate, the Electoral College counts and how to manipulate the vote on January 6th of 2022, how to manipulate that vote so that that the vote would not certify the election. He was the one that pulled that together, and so they're saying that his testimony undercuts the argument that Trump was making that Cheeseborough was just giving him legal advice. That's not legal advice. He was giving them campaign advice, and he was giving them advice on how to commit a crime. And he knew it was a crime. Anytime you're forging a document that requires a signature, and the signature says, before the signature, I'm certifying that everything that I said in this document is true, and you sign that document, then you are committing fraud, right? And if you sign somebody else's name to the document, you are committing forgery. That's just plain, simple law, right? Well, that's what was being done, what Cheeseborough was promoting. And he didn't just do it in Georgia. He did it in 5 states where they actually created a slate of delegates to the Electoral College Assembly on December, I think it was the Delegate College, I think it met on December 18th of 2021. Met on December 18th. That's when the Electoral College met, and the votes from all of the states were submitted and ratified. These are the votes from the Electoral College. Then the next step was on January 6th of 2022 was to take what the Delegate College says was the results of the federal election and submit those to the presiding officer of the joint session of Congress, which would have been Mike Pence. And once that was submitted, Mike Pence's job was to actually read out loud or have somebody read out loud what the Electoral College votes were for each of the individual states. And once that was done, then they had to say there's X number of delegates, representing Joe Biden. There's X number of delegates that represent Donald Trump, and X number of delegates representing Mickey Mouse and wherever else they did these nominations for. and then that becomes the certification of the election. If you have a body of electors, you have two different sets of people that are represented as the electors for a state, then that means you'd have to do an investigation to figure out which set of people were the real electors. That would take time. That's what Donald Trump and Cheeseborough were trying to get done. So you had Cheeseborough in that. There was one more person that has also been caught up on this thing, and we don't know if they've actually pleaded guilty or not. The ABC was saying that they have done a plea deal with Mark Meadows, who was another higher up Trump attorney, and I think he was a legal advisor to Donald Trump, a government-funded advisor to Donald Trump. And so it appears, according to ABC, that he has done a plea deal with the Justice Department for his testimony to keep him out of jail. But we don't know that to be true because Mark Meadows has said that what the media had reported wasn't true. So we'll see if all of that comes out. But of the 15 people or the 19 people that were originally indicted, at least 15 of them or at least 4 of them are not going to go to trial. And so that means the likelihood is that significantly more of those 15 that are left are going to do a plea deal as well. All that's going to become the background of evidence that's going to go against Donald Trump when he goes to trial. It's going to be very difficult for him to be able to overcome that evidence.
It's almost as if, all of these people that are indicted, I mean, everybody's going to get off. And you've spoken outright already that Trump more than likely will get off. So, I mean, this is just, to me, it's like,
they're trying to say that they're doing accountability, but it doesn't seem like accountability to me. It seems to me like you should fight these things through.
Yeah.
If you need 1 or 2 people to give testimony to verify certain evidence, you might do that. But you can't let all of these people off to do what they have done. Look how much money, how much time, how many people have been hurt, as a result of this. How can you let this go? There's another guy named Harold Dunn. He's a police officer that was hurt during the January 6th insurrection. And he said what I think is most important. He says at the end of the day, there has to be accountability. You can't attack the democracy of the United States and walk away scot-free. That just cannot occur. And so that's the lesson that we should be focusing on today. Yeah. Thank you all for listening to us and supporting us. We look forward to talking to you all on Friday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM, WBNY. Hopefully my voice will show up on Friday.